Our esteemed brother CPW, please proceed.
Bene, thank you, and greetings to my comrades here. I just wanted to make a report that the past 2 days, we have had an open platform with Jimmy Cherizier, who is often characterized as the gang leader in Haiti. We wanted to give him a platform to be able to address the global Pan-African community. We did that over 2 days. It was very enlightening. And he was making the point that until our forum, he hadn't been able to have a platform to reach the Pan-Africanists. I received some pushback from people that call themselves genuine Pan-Africanists who are very critical of Jimmy Cherizier, nicknamed Barbecue. I had told them that we refer to him, or I refer to him, as a freedom fighter, because it's obvious he is willing to take up arms to fight the neo-colonial imperialist core group that is invading his country and that is trying to impose government on him and those that are with him, and that he is exercising self-determination. So obviously he is fighting for his own freedom. Being a freedom fighter is not the same as being a revolutionary or a Pan-Africanist. But he indeed is fighting for freedoms. And I made the point that anybody that has the courage to take up arms against the neo-colonial proxy invaders should at least be given a platform to be heard. So this ended up dividing the Pan-African community. There was half the community is like, yes, he's exercising his right to self-determination. He admits that in the past, the gangs, the so-called gangs, are basically Haitian people, young African youth who were created by the core group neocolonials. They were given guns. They were paid to do kidnapping and violence for the political neocolonial sellout elites, and so that they are victims as well. And right now, General Commander Cherizier, aka Barbecue, was saying that he is engaged in politicizing the gangs, teaching them Pan-Africanism, getting them to understand that they must stop hurting their own people, being used as pawns for the core group. And that is the real work of Pan-Africanism. It is raising the consciousness of people to get them to understand the necessity of our unity and our inextricable and indissoluble ties to Africa and the restoration of our sovereignty and dignity. So Haiti is a flashpoint in Pan-Africanism, and I felt that we at least should be providing a platform with the main person that is claiming to take up arms to prevent the proxy army coming from Ruto and the UN multilateral or the core group mission. So that is one thing that caught the attention of Pan-Africanists around the world. And as a result, there was a large meeting today that included veteran Pan-African leaders from around the world, including the organizers for the Lomé, Togo-sponsored 9th Pan-Africanist in Congress in Lomé, Togo. The organizers for that were there. Comrade Udongo, who is organizing the 4th International Pan-Africanist event coming up in Madrid, Spain. I was on there as well. The Pan-African, the one Africa Forum, that is another group, WhatsApp group that has veteran Pan-Africanists from around the world. We had a large 3-4 hour meeting today discussing the fact that Togo has now postponed their 9th Pan-African Congress without public explanation. And this further has divided many Pan-Africanists. You have one group who feels like the quote-unquote genuine Pan-Africanists should organize and attend Togo in full force, even though the manner in which it was organized was out of tradition and did not respect the grassroots in Pan-African civil society, that nevertheless, we should recognize our interest in the fact that a government was willing to sponsor and host and allow Pan-Africanists of all shapes and colors to come in, even though they didn't shape the agenda. So one group was saying that we should crash the party, so to speak, and take over the agenda. The other opposition group is saying that because it is breaking with the tradition of how a Pan-African Congress is organized, and that it is represents state capture of the agenda, that it should be boycotted. And in doing so, it would then delegitimize the event, since a vast majority of well-known veteran Pan-Africanists did not attend and did not support it. I had raised the issue then that now that it's been postponed, that these so-called opposition genuine Pan-Africanists, I suggested that they are the ones that created the problem, because had they had a functioning secretariat and had they the capacity and ability to actually call and organize, quote unquote, a proper Congress, we wouldn't be in this situation. And so that now, if you are going to call for a boycott, it is your responsibility for the next generation of young Pan-Africanists to provide an alternative. It's not enough to just say, don't attend Togo. If you're going to take that position, you now have the responsibility to do better. So all of this has happened in the last 72 hours, and that is my report.
This is interesting. Yeah. So Brother Sipiwe, it seems to be that Pan-Africanists are not recognizing their own organized interests when they should. That they may not like, for example, the government of Togo doing what it's doing, but if it is promoting our interests, then why not? And from what you are saying, it seems that our Pan-Africanists sometimes miss that.
This was the point that Nyaka Lagoke, who is the prime principal organizer for the Pan-African Congress in Togo, was making. He said, look, those of you that are focusing on the Togo government are making a mistake. The Togo government is not saying it is the champions of Pan-Africanism. And this is not a referendum on Togo as a government and their Pan-African credentials or lack thereof. He is saying that we, as a Pan-African movement, we need to have a Congress. We need to be able to come together. And as a movement, we haven't demonstrated the financial capacity to do such a thing on our own. And even if we could, we would still have the logistics and security and visa issues. So you need a government, right, who is willing to host such an affair and be open to inviting all factions to the table. Togo has done that. And that is where it is suggested our interest is. Those people who are on the Sahel Alliance bandwagon, and I support the Sahel Alliance, but did they offer and do they have the capacity right now to hold such a Congress, which many people would like to see happen. When I visited Ouagadougou in May, this was one of the agenda items I put on my concept note in my discussion with the Burkina Faso Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that it was a propitious moment for Burkina Faso to step in, since they are winning the admiration of Pan-Africanists everywhere, not without some critical thinking and criticism, but generally, popularly, right? This would be a time where they could step in and offer to host such a Congress. But we didn't get a response or a reply to that proposal. But I think you are correct that we should discuss whether or not going to Togo is somehow in contradiction or giving Togo a vote of confidence, saying that it is the Pan-African headquarters, which I don't believe that's attending that would result in.
Yeah. No, thanks for your report. Is there any, so the gentleman in Haiti that you spoke about, so he is as I understand it, a gang leader. Is that correct?
So I would say no, that's not correct. He was
Okay.
part of the special police forces, trained militia leader. So he has real security training.
So
He
so he's a former police officer.
Yes, right. He did get involved with the gangs and is probably guilty of many atrocious things. At this point, however, he is showing himself to be on a path towards redemption. He is not running from the issue of the violence that the gangs have been accused of and that are committing. He is saying he has formed an alliance with it's called the G9 Alliance, with other quote unquote gangs. And they have formed an alliance called Viva Assam, which is dedicated to defending the self-determination, sovereignty, and dignity of the Haitian people. And what they are saying, what they are asking for, is peace and reconciliation through negotiation. They want a seat at the table representing the people. And their response has been counterinsurgency measures, counterintelligence measures, and repression. So their position is, yes, we have been a part of the problem with the violence and the gang warfare, but we want to stop that. And if you want that to stop, we have to be part of the process. You cannot just pick puppet leaders and say that they are now the government that we have to respect. No, they want a seat at the table and they want reconciliation and peace. They want to stop the violence. So they are on the ground campaigning with the gangs saying, look, stop fighting each other. Let's get ourselves ready for these invaders. That's freedom fighting. Some
so
agree with this.
Who are the invaders in this case?
So they are in this case, it is the core group that have sent foreign troops led by the Kenyan troops.
So they see the Kenyan troops as invaders?
Yes, they didn't ask for them. Okay. The Kenyan people, or excuse me, the Haitian people did not ask for this transitional government. Neither did they ask for these troops to come in. It was mostly a class issue of expatriate Haitians who have class interests, right, in sharing, disproportionately, I might add, in the extractive economy of the neocolonialists in Haiti. It was those Haitians that accepted this transitional government solution, not the people, what we call the inner city or the hood or the salt of the earth, which Jimmy Cherizier and his G9 Alliance claim to represent. They are saying, if you want to prevent civil war, because that's what he says, this is what is happening. You have some Haitians who support the transitional government core group plan, and you have some Haitians who don't. And it's going to result in those two groups of Haitians fighting each other in a civil war. And that the only solution to that is to invite the gang alliance into the peace process so that those people can be represented and have a say in the decision making. And the neocolonialist puppets and their transitional government and the powers that be do not want to have any dialogue with these so-called gangs, which they claim is the problem. So if they're calling for peace and reconciliation, why would you continue to bring in these forces that are going to take military action against them? Why not sit at the table and talk? Yes.
So what was that the reason, principal reason why you gave the platform for him to explain the political position as to why it was necessary for them to be engaged in any conversation to transform Haiti?
So yes, and let me explain that by saying, I serve as the Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa, which is the independence movement of Black people in the United States. Okay. We declared our independence in March of 1968. At that time, nationalist consciousness amongst the Black community in America was growing as a result of the disillusionment with the civil rights movement, which people had begun to feel was very limited, sellout, and they started to understand sovereignty and dignity, and they wanted a government of their own. A Newsweek poll, this is important to understand, a Newsweek poll showed that almost 30% of Black people under the age of 30 wanted a government of their own. So Black nationalist consciousness was rising. The United States government's response at that time was to issue the COINTELPRO counterintelligence program, where they designated Black nationalists as the #1 security threat. Then the Republic of New Africa declared its independence, and the war was escalated. And we, the Republic of New Africa and our New African independence movement, began arming ourselves. And we sent representatives to the African Liberation Committee of the OAU to get military training in East Africa. As we were doing these things, the United States government then rebranded its war against the freedom fighters and what they called the war on drugs. They flooded our communities with drugs and guns, and then we had this big gang problem. And then they used the gang problem to criminalize us, in which case the US prison population went from 50,000 to 400,000 in 4 years. So, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Republic of New Africa, I understood how the United States sends guns into our community, right? Creates the gangs, and then says we are the problem. And then they create a billion-dollar industry on imprisoning us, because you got to pay the courts, the lawyers, the stenographers, the police officers, the prison, all the prison staff, the cooks, all of that. So I could empathize with the propaganda against this man and what he's doing. All we ever hear about is gang violence, gang violence, gang violence. But it's never explained, right, that the gang violence that they are denouncing originated with the imperialists, and that now there is a faction of the gangs who want to politicize themselves. They want to change. And I feel that we as the Pan-African community owe it to them to help them become responsible revolutionaries and Pan-Africanists. That's why I gave him a platform, because until now, he didn't have a platform where he could speak to the Pan-African community.
Okay. Right, thank you. So finally, can you explain what is the link between the Republic of New Africa and Kwame Nkrumah's vision of a united Africa? Okay,
thank you for that question. So first, we have to remember that Kwame Nkrumah's vision for this united African states, the Ubuntu Pan-African ideal, this African Renaissance, right, took a turn, and we all know the Organization of African Unity was founded. It was compromised. But as soon as it was founded, the progenitor of the Republic of New Africa, its spokesperson was Malcolm X. Malcolm X went to the 33 heads of state meeting at the second summit and said, look, you all were an independence liberation movements in 1954, when Mau Mau in Kenya followed the Ethiopian victory in the Italian invasion of Ethiopia and started to fight for their liberation. And then the 34 of you are now independent countries, and yet there are still independence movements in the rest of the continent and outside the continent, including in America. He said, we are African people. Your problems on the continent are our problems, and our problems are your problems. Okay, so this was 1964, 4 years before the Republic declared its independence. But at that time, we had already organized underground armed units, right, that were preparing to engage in the armed struggle. Malcolm said, if South African racism, known as apartheid, is not a domestic issue, it is an international issue, then United States apartheid, United States racism is not a domestic issue, it's an international issue. And we need you, heads of states, to bring our case before the International Court of Justice. That is what he told the African leaders who were pursuing this vision of building a united Africa. Now, 3 countries in Africa promised Malcolm that they would bring the case before the World Court. It was Kenya, Burundi, and Tanzania. Okay? Malcolm, they never talk about this, but Malcolm made another visit to Africa in October, and he went to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Why did he go there? Because that was the headquarters of the African Liberation Committee of the OAU. All the remaining liberation movements had their representatives there, and they were given instructions. They had 2 main instructions. You had to form a united front of all the liberation forces in your nation, in your state. And 2, you had to demonstrate effective military capacity, because the OAU didn't want to squander precious resources, money, ammunition, and training to people who weren't prepared and couldn't effectively carry out military operations. So Malcolm was there receiving his instructions and preparing to send our quote unquote gangs to get military training. That was in October. Malcolm then went on a speaking tour, November, December, January, February, 4 months, and he was assassinated. 2 weeks after he was assassinated, it was reported that the court case against South Africa had opened at the International Court of Justice. But remember, it was supposed to be 2 court cases, one against South Africa and one against the United States, with our reparations demand and our demand for self-determination and our demand for recognition of our right to conduct a plebiscite and set up a nation of our own. When they murdered Malcolm, they don't tell you that they also murdered, within 2 months, the main Pandogama in Kenya, who was the main Kenyan supporter, the Prime Minister of Burundi, right? And there was one other official. All of them were assassinated at the same time. It is for this reason that the Republic of New Africa's case has yet to be brought before the International Court of Justice. Finally, in 1975, Queen Mother Audley Moore, the first signer of the Republic of New Africa's Declaration of Independence, was invited by Idi Amin to address the 12th summit of the Organization of African Unity as an honored guest. And she reiterated the call to the OAU that we want them to bring our case before the International Court of Justice, and we want the African states to recognize our independence movement and to provide whatever support, diplomatic, economic, military, whatever, that they could, because this is not commonly known outside of the New African Independence movement. So this is how the Republic of New Africa is related to Nkrumah's project. We are supposed to be part of one United African States as a new African state.
So what? Yeah. So what is the link between RNA then, Malcolm X, and the Nation of Islam's vision of their own state, independent state in America?
So, as I think everyone on this platform knows, Malcolm had a break with the Nation of Islam because while they used the term nation in their name, they were not really, they didn't have a program for how they were going to free the land. And as Pan-Africanists and Black nationalists, we were not all going to become Muslim, right? The religion was a problem for many of the nationalist camp. And so to put it simply, the Nation of Islam, when it comes to the actual nationness, they kind of leave that to God, and they weren't prepared to, as Malcolm said, by any means necessary. Nation of Islam had many limits. They were not prepared for a revolutionary armed struggle. And so this was where they came up short.
And finally, what is the link between RNA and O'Malley?
So all of these groups, Nation of Islam, Omali Yeshiteli in his African People's Socialist Party, they are all part of what we call the New African Independence Movement. We are all people who recognize self-determination and sovereignty and dignity. But as in any other place, just like you had ZANU and ZAPU, you have, every other place you have different formations pursuing that objective. And so Republic of New Africa and Omali Yeshiteli and his African People's Socialist Party and Uhuru movement, we are comrades in the struggle, but different formations within the same independence movement.
Okay, so brothers,
and just to say, there are some real ideological contradictions and conflicts as well.
Yeah. Brothers, if you how do you, so as you know, our Saturdays are for conversations like this, where we just talk about the current situation of our struggle for a united Africa. And as you know, there are those who have argued for regional integration as a means towards unification. And there are some of us from the consensus angle, or the Nkrumah angle, saying that regional integration will not lead to unification, and that unification, in fact, and liberation and development can only arise because of political unification. You see, so looking ahead, take into account the current situation, so for instance, if you take the fact that the Togo meeting will not take place, and some have criticized it, on all sorts of grounds. So will there be a move, for example, by those who didn't like it? Are they going to organize an alternative? And if they do, will that not be in an African country, on the African soil? And you and I know that there is no single African country today that is, in a way, championing African unification the way Nkrumah did. So what are your thoughts?
So,
So going forward, what's happening
yeah,
now?
my thoughts are, first of all, I do serve as strategy and research for the Pan-African Federalist Movement, West Africa region. So on this question, I follow our mission and our teaching, which is that a federal state must be a viable state. And if there's a great disparity between the members of a federation without a counterweight, the federation is not viable. And so the question of the balkanization of Africa, which weakens it, would not be resolved because it's always possible to pit one regional federation against another on issues of continental macroeconomics. So in this sense, I would agree that Kwame Nkrumah was right. My only real challenge is the fact that because there is such a disparity between educational levels, technical levels, political levels, there's such a cultures, there's such a disparity. Imagine trying to build a plumbing system when you have no standardized parts and fittings, where you have one PVC pipe that is 8 inches in diameter, and you're trying to match it with another one that's only 3 inches in diameter. So in terms of setting up an energy grid or levels of judicial administration, the disparities are so different, and there's so much language and cultural that I don't know how in one fell swoop we're going to be able to jerry-rig such a system with disparate parts. That's the real challenge, in my opinion. And to the other point, I did put the question whether or not those who oppose the Ninth Pack in Togo, if they are going to now have to rise to the occasion and organize an alternative. I don't have an answer for that, and it's not for me to say, to decide. I asked them to consider that and let us know.
Do you not think that, I mean, I hear you about the pipes analogy, but do you not think that where there is political will, because that is, I feel, what is lacking across the continent, there is no single African leader. Gaddafi appeared to show some of that, but currently there is no African leader who has the political will to champion the unification of Africa. India, as you know, was not a united country. India was united whilst Pakistan was carved out because Lord Mountbatten led that process, went to all the leaders that mattered and got them to sign the accession law. So where there is a will, there will be a way. Do you not think that the problem we have today is not that the pipes will not fit, but because there's no one who is willing to lead for the fitting of the pipes? You know, in the same way as Gaddafi said, look, why don't we use a dinari? Let's form a bank. We will use our gold, our dinari, as the basis for it. Or in the same way as he set up the first satellite, so that Africa will stop paying for satellite services. So do you not think that it is because of the lack of either an individual or a group with maybe the prestige, the power, the basis to lead? Isn't that really the challenge? Well, what do you think?
Yes, let me answer this.
Hold on. Let Brother Sikiwe finish, and then others can come in.
Yeah, your point is well taken, and I would agree with you that is a central part of the problem, that we have no quote unquote great charismatic figure who has the power and the capacity and the following and the status and the authenticity with an unshakable will to power to make it happen and cannot be bought. I would agree with that. I would suggest then, and you might call me naive or whatever, I would suggest then that we abandon that idea and that we develop the decentralized leadership of the workers, because the will, the United African States that I believe we are all talking about is a United African States of the people, not of political elites. And if we can build the campaign structures on the ground where we have quality leaders on the ground, they don't have to be charismatic and they don't have to be popular with lots of YouTube likes, and they don't have to be elected public officials that are in government. If we look to a model of leadership that is people-oriented and decentralized, and we have the proper campaign structures in each local, organized and coordinated in each nation and in each region, and we could convene a properly constituted first United African States Congress, the PAFM calls it the Pan-African Federalist Congress, but a Congress whose objective is taking the properly constituted delegates who represent all of the people on the ground who are already of this mindset. Then we don't need that big charismatic leadership. We just need an effective campaign machine. I yield.
Okay. I as a trade unionist, my sister went off for a brief moment. Yeah, as a trade unionist, I can kind of sense what you're saying, and yeah, okay, brothers and sisters, we have heard from Brother Sifiwe at length and learned some of the history. So let's have a conversation. Yeah, let's have a discussion around what Brother Sifiwe has shared with us. And Brother Sifiwe, so you will serve as a resource person for us as we have this conversation. Yeah. So
Thank you.
come in and explain things as we talk, so we can get a better understanding of the issues. Brother Pigeon. Yeah, Brother Pigeon, can you share this part of the conversation? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That was thank you, Brother Sifiwe, for that contribution and conversation. Yes, Brother Joe wanted to speak, but I saw Brother Victor's hand first. So let me start with Brother Victor and check if Joe is still in the list. Thank you very much, Brother Sifiwe, once again. Okay, Joe, go first, man. Just go first, and then I'll get to Victor.
Okay, I am Dr. Joe. I am a member of the advisory board of the African Integration think tank. Where the WhatsApp group is just recently registered with almost 800 members from all the 52 or 53 countries in Africa. It's quite a powerful group. We also are...
Brother Joe.
Yeah.
Once again, what did you say the organization is?
African Integration Think Tank.
Okay. So please, you'll share with us. I'll get in touch. You share with us maybe contact details so that we can check on what's going on. Proceed.
So this is our concept. Our concept is that there should be free movement of Africans. And secondly, Africans should be free to trade between one country and the other. Why do we do so? The boundaries were artificial and not for the interests of the African people. Because in so many places, families were divided and they were done because of the selfish interest of the colonialists. So we are working on that, and it is moving. Secondly, the history which Brother Sifere just shared, not many...
Brother Joe, sorry for interjecting. I want to follow up your conversation with a practical aspect of it. Yeah, I think today I was speaking on the same borderless Africa. In your own aspiration in regards to attaining that free and borderless Africa, which then brings the reality of our unification, what are the practical activities that you, or either they are legal documents or practical activities that you intend to do or you feel must be done in order to attain that free Africa? Like, or in order for someone to say now we have a borderless Africa, what are steps you are thinking in regards to that?
It's what I'm heading towards. What our brother just shared, the rich history just shared, not up to 10% of Africans know what he's talked about. Our curriculums in schools were structured by the colonialists, and they saved their interests. Somebody who is maybe somewhere in Chad with no port, no ocean or attached to it, will be studying shipbuilding in Japan. And that person will do nothing than rearing cows. So we have to first examine our curriculum and put it in the reality of the present Africa. Secondly, there should be a subject inside from nursery school, if possible, for the students to know that we are one. We don't need to go to the university before you start talking about African unification or how is Africa was one. Well, let me just digress a bit. The statement, the nation of Islam itself, it has a religion attachment to it. So that already removes people who are not in that. And that was the same error which Gaddafi made. No matter how people try to praise him and say all what they can say, because he decided to use religion as his own way of carrying out his crusade, he failed. So I think that alone is what I can rest my case.
Now, Brother Joe, I want to engage you on the same. You said that Gaddafi failed in his quest for unification of Africa because he used religion, for example, because he used Islam. I'm not sure, but members will inform me whether Gaddafi's plan for Africa was to make all Africa be Islamic, or what was it in that line. And if religion failed, as you're saying, what alternative should be used to unite Africa? Because we must be conscious that in the same Africa, we have Christians, we have Islams, and you have traditionalists. So what is then a moderate, equal, or neutral platform or activity that can be used as a tool to bring all Africa united together, from your point of view?
Yeah, thank you. I am in the United States. Religion doesn't play a major part in our day-to-day life. So Africans should have that. The nonsense we see in Nigeria, where people spend hours in the church house and spend less in productive sector, that should be eradicated from our minds. Without financial strength, no matter how you pray, you will still come back and go and beg for somebody who has money. This notion, which is in Africa, that you have to continuously be praying and money will rain from heaven, should be removed from our people.
Okay. I think, thank you, Joe, because today in a presentation, in a forum, I was speaking on that topic of borderless Africa. And my practical solutions that I was feeling in regards to that, of course, I know there are organizations, and some have joined here from either One Map Africa, who are pushing for a borderless Africa, as a theme that we were discussing during the Nkrumah's update. But I proposed some 3 activities. One, I said I'm aware of people who have initiatives to push for legal borderless aspect. Either they're approaching their government, putting petition in their parliaments so that their parliament can open border. But the question again, are the borders physical? Because basically, the people are physically there, police officers and some small building or some small construction put there. In fact, the border that divides Africa is not physical as a wall that divides your house or your perimeter fence. It's not even to that level. So I know legal challenging can be an issue to make a free border Africa, a borderless Africa. There's an aspect of a movement, I think is ACAP, African Continental Unity Party, that were organizing a mass continental movement to protest against the border. So people who are at the border cross over the border in massive to get to another country to see if those other countries will shoot them as a physical, practical way to try to cross the border and challenge that so-called border. But another aspect that I'm seeing as a long-term basis is what I call intermarriages. The younger generation today, if they can commit to marry beyond the borders, then the next generation they will give birth to, which border would they claim to? Will they claim to be Kenyans, Ugandans, and the rest? In that way, we can be able, in a phase of a time, even if it's 20 years' time, to give birth to a generation that do not recognize so-called colonial borders that were put in place. But that, as I've said, is just of what was my thinking in regards to have a borderless Africa. But yes, I also accept what you're bringing forth. Let me, Brother Joe.
His Excellency, can I come in?
Let me just say one point, then I'll let.
No, yes. So finish your point, then I get to Brother Victor before I come to you, Tapua, please, sister. Brother Joe?
Okay. What I suggested, it is the most practicable. Let us sensitize our people at the grassroots that if I am coming from Kenya, the person from Uganda is my brother. I don't need to fear. If the grassroots picks it up, and it is taught in school that we are one, we're just Bantus or whatever, that love starts from there. The policeman himself is acting like that because of ignorance. It's not doing that because of his complying to the law. He does not even know what it means. It is to his own advantage. Thank you.
Thank you. So a point of civic education is another point of action that can then sensitize and help us in this advancement of a unified Africa. Thank you for that suggestion. Brother Victor.
Thank you so much. I don't know if I'm very clear. Am I clear?
Yeah, you can proceed.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so my take is that the first thing is that we have to accept that from the past, current level in the future, the current global socio-economic and political system was really never meant for Africa in a way that it can really develop from it. However much we can try to be very defensive or more of look into it from a point of solution, but at the end of the day, we have to understand that that the current global and entire global economic system was meant to exploit, destroy most of things in Africa, and ultimately make it as a place just to be consumption and production. So, like consumption alone, yeah. So, from the point that I've been getting from the entire from here is that our approach is that Africa is facing a systematic challenge. And a systematic challenge does not need a one-end approach, whereby we say that let's do the awareness alone, let's leave the religion alone. We have to systematize our solutions. So if you are here talking about civic education, yes, we are doing it. It's very well. Civic education and advocacy, activism, all these things are very wonderful. But now, if we don't systematize it because we are facing a systematic challenge, so our approach or our solution has to be systematic. I might be thinking about doing one program in Kenya. Somebody might be thinking one in Lesotho. But now, if you don't systematize the approach to eat into that, because if the moment we are going to be sitting here, and we always have good solutions every day and again as Pan-Africans, but now the approach is that we tend to avoid some areas, such as religion, which I've just heard that even prayers don't work, that if somebody's prayer, I like that point, yeah. Yet most of our people some of them are very religious, and we have to get a way to get them from that matrix, that level of thinking. And this is very critical for the sake of our development. So my key point now is that the global system was never meant And at the end of the day, even if you look at the political system in our countries, every part of Africa, it is a mess. It is not a mess because of personality issue. They are a contributor to the mess because they are a product of that system. And the issue is there are people who are defending this system so much that if today you try to fight it, they will even kill you or destroy you completely. So my approach is that as when we are really fighting for the sake of this continent of Africa, we must have a territorial outlook of everything. And territorial outlook means that we have to be very concerned with the spirituality context of this continent, because I think from every day and again, people begin everything from the spiritual reality. That is one. Number two, we must think an economic system that is anchored on the people and driven on a participatory basis. Yeah. So if there's a grandmother somewhere in a village, yes, can you get?
Let's conclude. No problem.
Okay, let me conclude. Yeah, so if there's a youth somewhere in Kenya or in Uganda or in Tanzania, they have to get away that they are economic, because the boundaries are physical. They're like more of physical demarcations which were created. But now for us to connect, ours is to connect humans. After connecting humans, we'll really connect the continent, because once we find something that can bring us together, that is the point of connect. At the moment, we have solutions that are dispatched, fragmented, divided, and we speak the same things, so many different in the mindset, we'll never reach a systematic framework which can counter the systematic challenge. And this systematic challenge is what is producing these people that we complain so much about, like politicians. They are a product of that system, and they will never allow us to bring a solution that is going to make us not depend on them to make it work. So that is my take.
Victor.
Mr. Moderator, please, just a minute. Please, I want to beg clearly. Let us not lament, let us not regret, let us give suggestions which will take us moving ahead. Thank you.
Brother Joe, Victor is talking about systems and is proposing we need to have a system. Is that a lamentation or a suggestion on what we need to do? And I'm still coming back to him, and thank you for interjecting, but Victor, I know you work with systems. I know you are IT savvy. The question is, have you developed in your own profession or have initiative to develop a liberatory system or an Afrocentric system? Because, for example, and this is a challenge I give to all IT or ICT experts, we are united on a Zoom speaking today that do not belong to Africans. Have you, as IT experts, developed an African Zoom that counter this Zoom? Have you, as an African systems and African ICT expert, developed something that unites us in a systematic aspect? So, Brother Kwame,
can I come in there? Hold on, Brother Victor, hold on. Brother Victor, hold on. Brother Pigeon, I don't think that is a fair question. I don't think that is a fair question. I think that question must go to the if you like, the technocratic society of Africans, of all Africans who believe in the unification of Africa. So I don't think putting that question to Brother Victor alone in that way, I don't think it's fair. Thank you.
Please correct it to make it a bit fair for me so that he can respond. Because I know his area of background in terms of ICT and the work he has been doing. He has developed even what you call a Pan-African show that is trying to run for a period of time to bring the conversation. I was only asking whether they have thought to that level in terms of the people in the ICT, because he is still a professional in ICT, whether we can also get ourselves out, because we also don't want to be using Zoom for 50 years to liberate Africa. Of course, we'll use it if it's convenient and there's no alternative.
I mean, look, you see, the reason why I say it's not a fair question is that you could put the same question to me and say, well, Kwame, you are a mathematics teacher. What have you done to educate our people? You personally, what have you done to educate our people so that mathematically they understand that mathematics has its origin in Africa, blah, 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 blah. You understand? So it's in that sense that I think you are putting him on the spot, which I don't think is fair. That's the point I'm making.
Okay, thank you.
No,
brother,
it's very okay.
What's your feeling?
It's very okay. Yeah, it's very okay. There's no way. I can answer it, in fact, if possible.
Okay, I'm giving you a minute or two so that I go to the next person.
Okay. So I was saying that you didn't get me very clearly when I was talking about the system. And the system means that, leave alone the one, like IT in tech or thing. The system, I means that the entire social, economic, and political system, how these things are structured in a way that they're monitored and effectively. Yeah. So that is what I was speaking from. I wasn't speaking from a system of technology and all that. So this system is more of it is a corrupt system, which means today, if I take you to be the president of Kenya, people will still complain. Why? Because you are going to be a product of a system that does not work. The system is the political system. So what I mean is that for us to solve all these issues from economic, we have to kill the one-ender approach, whereby everybody thinks their solution is the only thing enough. That if people can travel from Africa from one point to another, that is the solution. No. The solution will run from every part of the economy connected and well versed. So that is what I was talking about.
Okay.
But if it is technology, we can have it another day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Brother Coco, permit me to bring Sister Tapua. Then I'll get back to you, Brother Coco, please. Sister Tapua.
Sorry, Brother Pigeon.
Yes.
Brother Pigeon, it was Sister Tapua that wanted to speak. It was One Map Africa. But of course, Sister Tapua can speak.
It was
the
One
lady
Map
that you heard whose voice here was One Map Africa.
Oh, that is Sister Achula.
Yes,
Sister
yes,
Achula,
Sister
are you
Tapua.
there? Sister Achula? Or from One Map Africa, whoever logged in with
His
One Map Africa.
Excellency, I'm here.
Oh, Sister Achula, proceed, please. Greetings.
Thank you very much. And my apologies for coming in late. I nearly missed the program. It's been great. Yeah, it's been great. And the contributions are huge. I think we are ready for the next step. There were some questions that were actually asked on the floor regarding what should be done regarding the unity of Africa, what approach should we actually go in for, and all that. The question I want to ask in the House is, what is the color of a Muslim's money or a Christian money? Do we have different colors? Does a Christian has their own money, and Muslims, do they have their own money? The African tradition, do we have our own money? That we can, when you buy something, somebody can say, okay, this is the Muslim money, and this is the Christian money. So this is the Muslim money. I'm religious. I'm a Christian, so the Muslim money I don't want. Do we have the North Africans? Do we have money for them that when they buy something, we reject and say they are North Africans, so we don't want their money, or South Africans? Where I am arriving at is our problem stems only when you can go around Africa's problem, talking of politics, politically, religiously, all the problems stems at only one place. That is the economic aspect. We have a problem. We are hungry. That is the problem. And the reason we have a problem is because of the we really managed. We have done pretty well. If these brothers were placed on the European soil or American soil, they will not survive in 2 days. We have survived long. How can two people live in the same area but don't trade together? We do not trade together. The things that we buy from Europe, America, we have them on this continent. In South Africa, in each area in Africa, we are not getting them because you can't deal with your brother. You can't do business with your brother. If you look at our currency, trying to send money from Ghana to South Africa is like a war zone. Russia and you got what do we call it? Ukraine war. I can't send money to Uganda without this. And we are not looking at that. Can you please hear me?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. So we are not looking at that angle. the angle we should be looking at is and trade. If we go with the trade angle, with this policy, it's about money. Who doesn't want trade in their countries?
Okay.
For the economy to actually boost or develop. Everybody does. Go to the politician and come to Ghana and tell Ghana, okay, Cameroon wants salt. Ghana actually produces a huge chunk of salt. Cameroon wants salt. You think that the Ghanaian president will say no? No. When you go to Nigeria, probably they have onions or something. Go to them, tell them we want to deal with your business. Let's see how they will say no. They need the money.
Okay.
Why don't we use the angle of the economic aspect, trade? And we tell them with the borders, we can't move. And there cannot be trade without movement. We need to move. With marriage, definitely, when we're doing trade, we will marry. Religion is actually developing in poor areas, not in rich areas. 70% of Africans are religious, and when you look at them, they are all poor.
Okay. Sister Chula,
Yes, please.
what should be done? I know you've mentioned Africa and are hungry. Of course, there's a proverb in my language that somebody cannot reason on an empty stomach. And I know we say we need money. Of course, some people have raised issues that money was also their creation, which basically they'll make it insufficient to us so that it's sufficient to them so that they can continue controlling us. But the same way, where do they get their money? Of course, they print it in their banks. They say they do businesses. Why are we hungry as Africans, where we have soil, land that can make us get all food we want, and then do you think that being angry is what stops us from uniting as a people of Africa?
Will you be able to think when you're depressed and frustrated?
So we can't think of uniting ourselves if we don't have food.
We don't have food. In an empty belly, look at Nigeria. Take Nigeria, for instance. Nigerians have the greatest genius people over there. But because depression and frustration, you understand? So the system puts you down. It makes you you're depressed, you're frustrated, and when you're hungry, you can't even think.
So your proposal is that for us to be united, we need to have food first of all. We need to ensure that our stomach is full. We need to ensure that we have financial empowerment as a basis for us to push the unification. That's what you're proposing.
My proposal, what I'm proposing is once we begin among ourselves, once we begin opening the borders, you don't even need unification of Africa. Africa has united already.
Okay. Okay. Because of time, permit me to go to, but you can put more of your proposals on the chat box so that we can get what you want. Send to Brother Joe. Our key call is what must be done. So feel free to interact with us on the chat box on the call, on the proposal and the points you want must be done in this conversation. Brother, come here. See, you want to come in?
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Sister One Map, Sister, is that Shula you were saying? Yeah, Sister, when you say Africa is united already, could you explain what you mean?
Thank you. So we have borders, which has actually divided us. Let's kick the borders out. Once we kick the borders out, and Nigeria is directly dealing with Ghana on trade and movement. Now Ghana is dealing with Togo on trade and movement. It is the unity of Africa. The unification has actually taken place. It is the first step.
Okay, thank you.
That is it.
I understand what you're saying.
All right. Thank you.
Brother Pigeon.
Brother Coco? And Brother Kwame, you'll advise us maybe when we almost surpass. I know we started late, but you'll guide us on time as well. Brother Coco, please come in.
Yes, greetings, comrades. Thank you for the opportunity. I think we moved away a lot from what Sipiwe was saying. He talked about the Cherizier. We didn't discuss that a lot. And I worry that if we don't, it's still coming to us. I see Congo as a mini reflection of what's happening in Haiti, because in there you have gangs which are being used by different parties to get to the Congolese minerals at the expense of the African. I did watch a bit of Cherizier's documentary. It wasn't just Cherizier, it was about Haiti. You realize just how corrosive the politicians were, who were just interested in the power and didn't care about the people. For now in Africa, it's as bad, but not as bad as it is in Haiti. So I think as we are discussing all of this, we need to be mindful of that and keep thinking and learning lessons from Haiti to make sure we don't get to that position. And how do we not get to that position? Is by making sure that the governance system we have is rooted in Ubuntu, is rooted in I am because we are, and is rooted in the ruler is only a ruler by the grace of his people. But at the moment, it's not the case. We have competitions all over. We have, you can call them vitriolic competition for power in different Berlin Conference partitions, which they continue to reign years after we said we will unite. The reason why we have remained as we are is to benefit someone. Let's not forget why the colonizers came to Africa. They came to Africa with a three-pronged strategy. And that strategy was three C's. Yeah, we are talking about, Brother Victor, can you please mute? Thank you. So there is that civilization. Then there is commercialization and Christianity. Brother Pigbin, I don't know what's happening with Victor's mic.
I've muted him. So Victor, please, I'll call you to unmute yourself and then you speak after some time. So I'll call you. Just unmute yourself. Stay muted. I'll unmute you. Yeah, Brother Coco, proceed.
Thank you. So we need to realize where we went wrong, or where our ancestors went wrong, and start to rebuild from there, reclaim what was rightfully ours. They said to us, we were not civilized. By trying to civilize us, they were removing us from ourselves. They were taking away the Africanness in us. We need to reclaim the Africanness.
Okay.
Then,
Brother Coco.
yes.
Sorry to interject a bit. I know also time is not on our side, but when we look at us, are we united as a people from your perspective as Africans?
No, we are not.
We are not united. And what then will you see to feel like we are united? What will you actually see to tell that we are really united?
For instance, we do have the regions which they said they were going to use that model. But unfortunately, that model isn't working. Why is are Zimbabweans still seen as foreigners in South Africa? Why are Basotho still seen as foreigners in South Africa? Let's not forget, it's the same in ECOWAS. Why is ECOWAS fighting against AES? Is that unity to you? So there are lots of things that are happening. It's taking too long to realize that dream. And unfortunately, the African Union workers or employees, they have the African passports. You know that, right? They can go anywhere in Africa, but not everyone else is allowed to do that.
Okay, in brief, because of time as well.
No, before that, let me just summarize the 2 points that I had. I talked about civilization and I talked about commercialization. The commercialization is the root of neo-colonialism that we have. Our products are being exported raw to the colonizers, and we have to continue buying from the colonizers manufactured goods at higher costs. It's a discrepancy. That's a problem. Then I know the sister said Christianity and Islam, we shouldn't talk about that, but we have to realize that foreign religions were there so they can stake their claim on our countries. They have to continue ruling us like that because we continue being attached to them through that way. Thank you.
Okay, just one thing that you think must be done.
Education, my brother. Afrocentric education. The education that brought us here will not take us to unity.
Okay, thank you.
Can I,
Yes.
yeah, I think there are still some hands up, like Tapua, Kunta Kinte. But can I make I suppose 3 quick points? The borders of Africa are legal things, you know. It's not just about saying whether there's a physical border on the ground. So the country Ghana, for instance, is defined in law by latitudes and longitudes. So let's bear that in mind. The other point I also like to make is that to ask whether we are united as a people now, I feel is to move away from the key point. If we're already united as a people, then we will not need unification. We need unification precisely because we're not united, either at the national level or at the African level. I don't know of even one family where there's no division in the family, where this uncle and that uncle don't speak, or whether they. So that is not a problem. That is not the reason why we should not unite. So we want to unite precisely because there is no unity on the ground. Then it doesn't mean because we are united, we will still not fight. There will still not be differences. You know, that when you look through your window, you will not like what you see and insult the other family at the other side. It doesn't mean that suddenly we will all be singing kumbaya, kumbaya, kumbaya. The final point is that I feel that Brother Kuku said we move away from Brother CPU's key point. And I would have thought he himself, Brother Kuku, would then bring us back to that point. But then he then also moved further away from it. But the CPU has made a point of a federalist movement, and the basis for this federalism rooted in the ordinary people and how we organize them. And I would have thought that is the kind of thing we should be discussing in terms of unification, and finally, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, Islam and Christianity are African religions. They were all started from Africa. So how are they foreign religions? I don't understand. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Sister Tapo, please come in. You can respond as well in your conversation to what Brother Kwame has raised as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the first point I'd like to comment on is the legality of boundaries. The question is, whose law? Whose law? Because these boundaries were not set by us. So as much as we were able to fight against the systems that were imposed on us in the liberation struggles, so too we can refuse to accept those borders, and we can actively refuse to accept those borders by some of the suggestions that Comrade Pigbin has said. Because I live in a border town, Zimbabwe and Mozambique. People do not respect the borders, because what we have is a situation where families are across borders. The system that was imposed on us forces us to acknowledge this division. Sometimes there's barely anything between the people. I mean, we have a situation, for example, where someone passed away in an accident on one side of the border. People simply brought his body back, maybe 3 kilometers or so, and they were taken up by law because they were told they were supposed to have traveled 200 kilometers down the road to the border post and 200 kilometers up back to their village. So my solution is we need to encourage people to ignore these borders, which they are already. I've got a relation of mine who simply says, I'll go to South Africa when I want to. I can just get onto the bus and get there. And she gets back. and she doesn't have a passport. She doesn't want to have a passport. So what you have is subversion already taking place by people who are transporting those people, one who might not be able to afford a passport and who are trying by all means to make a living. This takes me to my sister's contribution. I think we're forgetting why the boundaries were created. We're forgetting why we're disunited, because it is to someone's advantage. It is to the colonizer's advantage that we're divided. And as long as we are not focusing on what it is they wanted from us. For example, I didn't realize the extent to which Africa is dependent on Ukraine for food, for feeding ourselves. So we have blindly walked into this trap where we are instructed to grow tobacco, to grow cotton, to grow all these things that will make sure that we're dependent. I think we need to encourage people to focus on ourselves first and ignore our leadership.
Okay.
For example, what the Kenyan,
Proceed.
what the Kenyan is doing in terms of fighting to use indigenous seeds is what should be happening. And then my last point is on religion. Religion plays a very important role in a human being's life. It doesn't matter which religion, and especially when people are cornered. I'm coming from the psychological point of view, where when one is depressed, one is cornered, one feels helpless. Africans have survived through time because of religion. I am not saying religion in itself is the source of our salvation, but I'm saying what we have used to counter the effects. Because when you're feeling helpless and you're faced by the systematic exploitation, and you don't seem to be able to see where the problem is coming from, you're forced to look at God. But what we want to do is to show people, for example, that when the Christians came into this country, they manipulated what was our religion to our disadvantage, because we cannot move out of the religion camp. And I'm thinking of Zimbabwe. Zimbabweans have become such religious zealots. It's scary because of the pressures they are suffering. So they've tried to vote, they've tried approaching SATP. Even the opposition leader is now saying it's in God's hands. Because so when we have a situation
Sakapua,
like
can
that,
you round up so that others can speak, because we have a lot of hands up? Yeah, thank you.
So my solution is, let's subvert the system. Let's encourage people. Let's educate people. Let's work with the people I at. If it's religion, let's talk to them about the religion so that they begin to question it. Otherwise, we can't tell them to stop. You're saying to someone, use your crutch. I end there for now. Thank you.
Okay, Brother Kwame, please.
The time is now. Yeah, the time is now 2 minutes to 9. We started the meeting about half an hour late due to some technological glitch. If it is okay with everyone, we can extend it to half 9. Is everyone okay with that? So we make up for the half an hour lateness.
Yes, thank you.
Which means
Yes.
feel free to leave if you have a prior engagement and have to go. We will finish then, if everybody agrees, with we finish at 9:30. So thank you very much. Brother Pigeon,
Okay.
Thank you very much for sharing the discussion. So in the
yes, I wanted to come in.
Yeah, you haven't shared your own view yet, so you need to share your own view. But Thank
No, I
you
want
for,
you to come in. I want you to come in to lead this last part.
yeah, that's fine. So thank you for sharing the discussion after Brother Sipiwe's contribution. And so thank you very much. I would have thought, let's give it back to Brother Sipiwe to comment on what he said so far. And because he and his organization are grappling with what we have set aside a Saturday for, it would be nice, I would have thought, to hear from him. But before Brother Sipiwe comes in, can I encourage us, in as much as we want unification, making romantic arguments is not in our interest. We must make arguments based on reality. We in the Constantine Study Group are scientists. We base our philosophy and our ideology on scientific knowledge. We accept that science itself is changing all the time. And when the science changes, we change with it. Okay, so let me make the point again, in case I've been misunderstood. The definition of a state in modern international law is not based on sentiment and how people feel. It's based on international law. The country Ghana is defined in international law. It has rights and privileges defined in law. Because you can travel to another country by bus and say you don't need a passport and you are able to enter, does not mean that that law has disappeared. It doesn't. You see, whose law it is not the issue. The law that underpins the United Nations, international law, is precisely that. It's international law. It doesn't belong to any one person. So if you don't want that law, then you have to then create your own international law. That is what BRICS are doing. So please, when we are talking about African unification, we're not talking about romantic ideas. Please, we want discussions and recommendations based on reality. Please. Thank you very much. Let's then hear from Brother Sipiwe in terms of what he's heard so far. Thank you.
Bene, thank you. I'm so glad the ancestors told me to come to the meeting tonight. This is a great discussion. On the issue of religion, let me just say one quick thing, then I'm going to move on to this concept of international law and some other things. On religion, I find it interesting that no one is talking about the Pan-African religion that was created at the same time as Pan-Africanism, which is the Rastafarian religion. It is a Pan-African religion that has universal appeal throughout the Black world. Not only is it a spirituality, it deals with Aita living, which is natural living. It has a culture, it even has a soundtrack, reggae music. If you want to study, right, the possibilities and limits of having a Pan-African religion, I would suggest you study the Rastafari movement, what it achieved and what it failed to do. Now, having said that, I would disagree that international law is international law. International law is not international law. The international law and the international world order grew out of colonial and neo-colonial order. Now, if we go back to the moment when Pope Nicholas issued his apostolic decree declaring total war on the people of Africa, when those first ships arrived, African people had their own concepts of law, their own judicial systems. It was based on fundamental differences where when you truly understand Ubuntu, African legal systems were based not on punishment and retribution, but on restoring balance to the community. That's the guilty party and the victim. There are real fundamental differences in indigenous African systems of law. So even today, I challenge international law, the Geneva Convention, even the International Court of Justice itself. I do not contend that that is an African creation, even though we have signed treaties and we are subject to it. So I think the point of the matter is, according to whose law has always been, according to which jurisdiction. Let me give you a concrete example. According to, if we look at the reparations movement and you look at quote unquote international law regarding this, it will tell you that in settling kind of reparations claims, the jurisdiction belongs to the origin of the crime. And since the crime originated on the African continent, that would mean that it would be Africa's prerogative to create tribunals if it's going to adjudicate reparations. It's not the international court's prerogative, according to international law. But if we don't have international law practitioners who have a sovereign African legal juridical mind, we'll never be able to call them on that. Now, finally, a point was made, and I agree that we need to subvert the laws. That is what sovereignty is. It's the power to do what you want, when you want, regardless of the forces of opposing you. However, consider a case like mine. I'm born in Chicago. I want to come to Africa. So I have to enter Africa somehow on a plane with a passport. Now, I live in Guinea-Bissau. When I want to go to, when I went to Zimbabwe, I had to fly first to Dakar, then to Zimbabwe. It's not the same as taking a bus. So while some people who live on the borders and can go back and forth, and subvert the law, there's a significant population that is not traveling by bus. We are traveling by airplane. And when I land in that airport, as much as I want to subvert the law, I can't just pass through the gate without, being seized. And so this is what I'm thinking as I'm listening to the conversation. Let me land there.
Yeah. So, brother Sifiwe, thank you for your interjection. You see, I don't disagree with anything you've said. You see, I am not suggesting that the current, if you like, contours of international law apply to us, or that we should let it apply to us, right? But when we declared independence, so when Ghana declared independence in 1957, and it registered Ghana as a sovereign state, where did it register it? At the UN. We didn't create the UN, it was created by the imperialists. Now, you and I are agreed that that version of international law is not serving us. We need a new Africa, United Nations of Africa, United States of Africa. That must itself be based on some form of international law. And it may be that we don't like the current international law, so we create our own, right? But even if we create our own laws, there will still be international law. Because why? Because we'll be asking others to respect the jurisdiction and the proclamations of our new international laws. So let us be clear. No one here is saying that the current in fact, we all here know that there's a country, I don't want to mention its name, that just disregards international law, and it kills people, it assassinates people, it uses walkie-talkies as instruments of terrorism, and which under international law is not acceptable, and yet this nation is doing exactly that. So I am not. So we are not suggesting that the current state of international law is in our interest or that we created it. But then that is the point. We have to then create our own set of international law, and the way we can do it is, but as I am suggesting that the point you made earlier about the African people, the ordinary people, taking sovereignty into their hands in some kind of federalist movement to reorganize the entire relationships on a global scale. I thought that is the way forward. Maybe,
Yes.
maybe. I mean, that's what I am thinking.
Can I come in?
Yeah,
I think we need to be careful about the way we use language. Because if we're going to talk about romantic, when we're saying suggestions that we want to, of the direction that we think we should take, what do we mean by romantic? By romanticize.
I will explain. By romantic, I mean that saying things that are not rooted in current reality. You know,
Right.
suggesting. So, for suggesting, as Brother Sipe was saying, yes, the example he gave. If you live in this country and you want to go to another country, if you live in Ghana, you want to go to Ivory Coast or Togo, you can, you can bypass. In fact, you can bypass border checks if you want to go from Ghana to Ivory Coast. There is a route through the bush where there are no borders. Yeah, but when you are flying from Chicago to Ghana, you can't pass through the bush, and you can't just walk past immigration officers. You see, so that is what I mean. That there are legal realities on the ground.
Okay, what we're saying is, this is my reality. I have interacted with people who subvert in ways that you wouldn't imagine. And I think because if you're living in a place structure, then you're prone to seeing such suggestions as romantic. This is reality. And I'm talking about real.
Satapua, Brother Sipiwe cannot just land at Kotoka International Airport and bypass immigration officers and enter Ghana. He can't.
No, you know what?
That's the reality.
Excuse me. It's only his reality if he's using the system. But there are people who fly to places without using the system. There are people who go on foot without using the system. As long as we are acknowledging the system, therefore we're tied to the system. What I'm saying is we need to make sure that whatever we're trying to say should not be regarded as romantic by people who are living on the other side of the fence when we're talking about what's happening now. Because, for example,
point respectfully taken. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, thanks very much for making that point. Yeah, thank you. Do you want to say any more so that others come in as well? Yeah, is that a point?
No.
Would you like to add? Yes. Would you like to add anything else?
Not at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. No, thank you very much for making the point that that which is seen as non-romantic by some seen as romantic by others. Brother Kunta Kinte, you haven't said anything. I would like you to come in. Oh, sorry, who was that? Sorry, I didn't get that.
No, somebody else said
yeah, Joe, can you hold your thoughts? Let's hear from Kunta Kinte, who hasn't spoken yet at all. I know Victor has, Sister Chizobo hasn't spoken yet. So let's hear from brother or sister Kunta Kinte. Is an interesting name, as you know. It comes from that famous story of the African who was enslaved. Yeah, Kunta Kinte.
Yes. Evening, my dear comrades. This is thank you very much, Pigeon, for the invitation. I am so glad that I was able to join. So generally, my name is Father Guru from Kenya. I have been, I was once in the meeting, but I think I got lost a bit. So I'm a Catholic priest, and so I've been listening, especially on the issue of African unity, on the perspective for
yes. Can I interject before you continue, Father?
Okay.
Thanks for having you with us once again. Yes, you have been missing, and we've missed you. One of the things we are asking for is that can you help us set up a church of African unification?
Okay. Exactly.
Thank you. Please continue.
On African, I just have 2 points backing myself on two things. One is the saying, the Swahili saying, I don't know whether we all understand the saying that says, Mwachamila ni mtumwa. So that if you fail to follow your culture, you remain a slave. So that's already answers so many questions about religion, because most of whatever we see in religion and being an authority on the Christian religion, having traveled even more served as a missionary in the US, and lastly, I was also in Haiti, missionary to go transform Haitian culture into Roman culture. So I realized that's when I started realizing that religion has touched our culture so much. So anytime we are following other people's culture, and there are so many other aspects. And one, a major one, and that is what now comes to the second point, to the first point about if you don't follow your culture, you remain a slave. The second one is on for you, for any person to excel and to perform perfectly, just as any component, any instrument, any gadget has to follow blueprint. So the same case with a human being, you have to have something that is in you, that was created in you, so that you can function well. And so, and that thing is that we call it. You're getting me? We call it in our language magogona, or the kind of sacrifices, how you are able to connect with your maker in terms of the sacrifices you make, the offering, the what. So that's very, very vital in the growth of a human being. Just like a good example, when you go to the automotive, the cars. If a car was made to use petrol, and by mistake you go and put some diesel, that car will automatically jam. And I don't know what the best solution you'll do. You obviously you go to the maker of that company. If it's a Mercedes, you cannot go to a Mazda shop. You still go to the original. The maker is Mercedes. They go and remove or do a data cleaning. So my proposal now that we go back to our origin and our maker. And also now the second point, I will back it with the scripture. The Bible in Daniel chapter 11 verse 32 says that those who know their God will do great will and exploit. So as long as Africans do not know their God, we will continue to suffer colonization.
Yeah,
And
but
all this.
brother Kunta, I mean, isn't it fair to say Africans know their God? I mean, I mean, we can argue that some Africans don't know their God, but surely, I mean, you know the African God, so do I, so does Brother Pigeon, but so does Brother Sifiwe Sisatapura. I think we here know our African God. The issue we are grappling with now is how to unify the continent.
Okay, great.
And how do
So,
you think our God can help us?
okay, great.
Because
How,
that God so far has watched us, watching the continent going from one disaster to another, and we don't see any action on the part.
thank you. So I would say this on the time of, I normally, whenever such a point come, we talk about two types of time. There is chronos and kairos. I know we have talked about even in the conscious class. So kairos is the time of God. So I would also believe that all these things that have been happening with the African was allowed by God, just as he had done, we read in the books of Israelites who went for slavery for 400 years in Egypt. The same case, we have been slaves of these colonizers for 400 years.
So Brother Kunta, it's not because we don't know God, because he has decided that we should be enslaved.
Okay, good. I would say, yeah, he allowed, and from 1619, when our people started becoming slaves, up to this time, those are 400 years. So I think that's why we are now having this conversation. We are seeing all things that are happening. And I believe, for me, I saw that the pandemic about the COVID-19, it was very timely. That was Kairos. That's why 1619.
So Brother Kunta, the point I'm making is, so not knowing God is not the issue. The issue is what God wants to do, whether we know him or not, whether we know her or not. That is the issue from what I'm hearing you say.
Okay, let me know.
Can you link what you're saying with us with African unification so that we have a clear path? as to what to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
So my point basically is for us to have African unification and unity, we have to go through a complete reset. Like just if you have a gadget, your phone, and it is full, it is hanging, and so you just do factory setup. And one way of doing that is to do, especially, we have to realize what was this tool that the colonizer used to divert our somebody proposed about education system and most of all those things. For me, on the issue of religion, I go back to the people who sat together in the year 325 at a council called the Council of Nicaea, and they came up with four big theories. Don't sell all these things. Don't go beyond those four things, and tell the world about these four things. We are going to conquer them. So the moment as Africans we will that these four things were sat together and somebody said he's going to control the world with these four things. And these four things, they may sound harsh to some people, because it's like bones. So you have to have strong to accept four theories that were used by the colonizer. And one was Satan, the second one was judgment, the third one was hell and heaven. Those are the four things. And the moment as Africans, we find them on our own thing. We first of all dismiss because for truly, Saturn, judgment, hell, and heaven, they were created by the Roman Empire from Emperor Constantine. So, and these are because Africans, they were told, they were always in the church talking about heaven. Like yesterday, I was invited, I was doing a burial somewhere, and I read to the mourners, Matthew chapter 5, verse 5, that those who are humble will inherit earth. And I told the mourners, because everyone, all the preachers, pastors were telling people about going to heaven. I told them, for me, I'm at home. I was brought here. This is my home. I'm not going to heaven. So the moment we will remove in our minds about those aesthetic things, heaven, hell, judgment, Satan, that's when we will be able to our God and connect. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very, very much for your detailed statement on how we could reframe some of the concepts that we've inherited from religion. Thank you. Let's hear from Brother Joe and then Brother Victor, who have their hands up. Brother Joe.
Yes. I want to thank you for this great discussion, opportunity for us to discuss. I'll try to use about 3 minutes.
Joe, just so you know, we have this discussion every Saturday.
Okay.
So it's part of our staple diet of conversation among Africans, where we look at the unification of Africa and the impediments and to it and that which are promoting it. And then we have a discussion. It's a conversation amongst Africans around the world. So we do this every Saturday. So feel free to join us next Saturday if you are available. Thank you. Please proceed.
All right. So I want to thank Brother Sifiwe, although I came when he was talking already. So maybe some of his rich materials, I missed it. But if they will post the...
He has posted the link to the RNA website in the chat. If you look at the chat, it's
okay,
there.
I'll try to check.
And then if you would like more info, put your details in the chat, and Brother Pigeon will pick it up, and then we'll contact you and give you any other further information you need.
Yeah, I'll put my email there.
Thank you.
Yes. If he has on YouTube, maybe Brother Pigeon will help me with it. I want to know more about that issue about Pope Nicholas, because sometimes when we talk about the issue of religion, there are those who argue for it. So maybe I'll get it. Some of his
in fact, Brother Joe, we have in the past, we've had sessions on this very topic. I know Brother Sipiwe's link does talk about it. We have our YouTube channel of our previous videos, and Brother Pigeon here has done a presentation on that very issue. And we also had a brother who spoke at length on the invisible government, which is linked with secret societies and that whole history and finance and money. And again, those are available on our YouTube channel. So if you put your link in the chat, yeah, Brother Pigeon will get in touch with you and share these things with you. Yeah.
Can I make a
Pigeon,
quick
Brother Pigeon, maybe you should share the YouTube link in a chat,
okay,
so that those who want to follow it up.
Can I take a 30 seconds
yes.
to,
Brother Joe, have you
address
finished?
this?
Not yet, but let him speak.
Yes, if you can just hold on. Let Joe finish and then you can come. Yes, Joe, finish.
Okay. What I want to say is that the issue concerning Africa is systematic. And if you have systematic problems, you can only use systematic solutions for it. It is most often we in Africa, because of our religiosity, we believe in luck. We believe that things will just happen. And that's why so many people have been carried by church issues. They just believe that if they will keep on praying and praying and praying, then they will discover how to make a car. It doesn't work in that way. Then, secondly, I want to say that there are two approaches in anything in life, the bottom up and the top down. The top down is what we have been waiting for 63 or more years, or 5 years in Africa, waiting for the top people to sign treaties and abolish laws, and it is not working. And it will never work. We will continue waiting and waiting and waiting until we use the bottom-up approach. And what is the bottom-up approach? We have realized that our people are ignorant in many things. If you don't educate them so that from the grassroots, people understand the truth and where they are, then we'll continue to be suffering there. Then the last point which I want to make which is my argument against the borders. If these people have advanced technologies they can go to the space and know the type of minerals which are in your soil. When they are looking at those things, they don't look at it as in Nigeria, in Chad, in Ghana. They know that it is in Africa, and they go and pick it up. When they come and pick it up, you will not come and say, oh, don't you know that we have a boundary here, which is no. They know that they are coming to exploit Africa. They don't care the country. So I tell our people, if something happened to an African somewhere, they will not say it happened to a Nigerian. They know that it happened to a black man who is from Africa. So those are the points which we advance it to make people understand that those border things don't mean anything any longer.
Yeah, Brother Joe, thank you very much for your comments. On the bottom up matter, Brother Sipiwe may want to address that. That is the whole argument of the federalist movement led by Brother Sipiwe, which says that we must do it bottom up. On the question of how imperialists see the border, you will be aware that this is a point that Nkrumah was making many, many years ago, and people like Nyerere did not understand and said it took them 10 years to understand. And that's the point you are making. So thank you very much. Let's Brother Sipiwe come in, and then Sister Chizomo hasn't spoken, and she will speak, and then we'll hear from Brother Victor again.
Brother Tommy.
Brother Sipiwe, come in. Yes.
Brother Victor has been raising his hand to an extent that he even went to my WhatsApp to text me to remind me, but okay, you've listed.
Oh, is that it's not the same thing? Oh, there are two Victors, aren't there?
There are two.
Yes,
there are two.
Yes,
I will yield.
Yes,
I will yield. Let them go.
No, Sipiwe, no, you come in, make that comment because you're like our resource person today. So you speak, and then we'll go to Brother Victor and Sister Chizomo.
30 seconds on one point, 30 seconds on another. Brother Joe had mentioned the Pope Nicholas. I just want to make one comment about that. What is of particular importance is that the Dom de Versus Apostolic Edict is a declaration of a category of war called total warfare that does not distinguish between combatants and civilians. In the international legal order of today, such warfare has no statute of limitations. So the thing that's important about that and why I speak about it so much is because there are international treaties like the Geneva Convention that talk about, that govern warfare, political prisoners, and reparations. And so the narrative about the quote unquote slave trade must change. It has to change from a slave trade, which it wasn't trade, it was a military invasion, and there were no slaves. There were people who were captured as prisoners of war and enslaved. So that's one thing the Pan-African movement need to do right now and take the lead in changing that narrative, okay? The second point I want to make is this conversation, rich as it is one of the reasons why the Pan-African Federalist movement realized that within the Pan-African community, we needed to have a conversation of engineers, not people. For example, let's take the technology. We can sit around and talk about we need Pan-African TV, we need Pan-African radio, we need this kind of curriculum, right? But when you have a conversation with ITC engineers, they're not talking about what and the purpose and the different, they're talking about the engineering. You take this piece, you connect it to that piece, and it will have this function. That is what the PAFM wanted to bring to the Pan-African movement, where we get together, we're not talking history, we're not talking ideology, we're not talking religion. We are taking the organizers who understand engineering. How do you build a campaign machine for the United African States? You can't do it by having these kinds of conversations. You have to have engineering type conversations. So that is the point I wanted to do.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I'd like to say that we support what you've just said, CSG, and we are just facilitating that conversation. That is our point. Yeah, so we agree. We're not saying we are making that conversation, we are facilitating. So thank you very much. Sister Chizomo and then Brother Victor, and then we'll bring the meeting to a close. Sister Chizomo.
Hello.
Hi.
Been trying to log in all night. For some reason couldn't get in.
Sorry about
but
that.
Anyway, so I've missed a lot, so I might be repeating what
Yeah,
has already been said.
That's what there was a glitch. That is also one of the reasons why you could not. Thank you. Please proceed.
Yeah, unification of Africa. I'm currently in Africa myself, and obviously I hadn't been for some time, and on the ground. Things change rapidly in Africa, although it looks like development is not happening, but change is happening. So when I'll start with what I think it was Tapua who was talking about borders and skipping borders and stuff like that. I have noticed that because I'm in the same region with her, I have noticed it's happening quite a lot, and it's discussed openly and it's operating openly. But not necessarily, in my observation, that there is a movement to ignore borders, but that the corruption has come to a level whereas a system has been set in place that's now governing all these movements around the region. So you do find people saying they can go in and out, for example, South Africa without documentation. And they go and they come and they go and they come. And I think somebody has done a video on it, actually on the route to getting in there and how they do it. So it's not necessarily, because these people who are doing it are not in the, I know you brought in about international law and all these other things. And I think somebody here also mentioned that there's a lot of ignorance on the ground. So they're not doing it because they know the rules and the regulations and the laws. They're just doing it because they've set up their own system to get by. That's what they can afford. That's what they can afford. And also the officers themselves, the civil service, not even the politicians, but the civil service that people we keep skipping because we're always talking about politicians and whatnot, but there's the civil service who set the system as to what's happening. So the immigration officers do run this system. They put the price that you should pay, they do the trafficking, they organize everything. So it's coordinated across the region that people can be moved around in certain routes and in certain whatever. And also on unification, I'd like to say we need to focus. We need to really, really focus on ourselves and what we need to do about what we're discussing. Once we start bringing in all these foreign systems to try and explain what we want to do, we're going to complicate ourselves and confuse ourselves. So when we talk about these borders and the movement of people within either regions or within Africa, let's focus on the actual laws in Africa. Once we start bringing in international laws, which is partly to blame of what's going on in Africa, then the bottom approach, up approach won't work, because we're starting from the top. Oh, UN says, or so international law says this, this, and that. Let's start from domestic laws. Let's start with domestic laws, national laws, to organize that, to dispute that, to repeal those, to see the injustice that they are bringing, sort that out internally and regionally, and then at continental level. So in terms of the bottom-up approach, for example, here where I am at the moment, I see it happening a lot. There's a, like I said, there's a system the civil service has, there's a system the lower class has, and then there's a system the top people have. So there's a clash between the three, literally clashing. It's war against the three different levels. Although the civil service is quiet, it doesn't make much noise, but you only see the outcome. You only see the outcome because they are the ones that run the system. They're the ones that set the policies. They are the ones that implement whatever anybody is saying. So you find the bottom people have now created also their own systems. They've got associations, they've got all sorts of things going, you name it, they run, and then they fight the top people. They fight the top people. That at some point I feel the top people are losing, just like it's happened in Kenya. I don't know where the Kenyan story is going because I've lost track of it since I've been here. But looking from where Malawi is going, these guys have power to actually distract what the top level is doing. And so I feel the bottom approach should be the one they approach, but because of the ignorance, although they have got a system to fight the top people, they are ignorant of the issues. And here, I don't think religion is much of a problem. I was in a district where it's mainly Muslim dominated. There don't seem to be much of a conflict within religions, but political parties is a serious problem. If we're talking about unity and we have such political systems, it's gonna cause, I don't know where we're heading with all these political issues. Political parties, they're bringing so much division, they're not helping much. I'm not even sure if multi-party system is the one we should be doing as African countries.
Thank you, Sister Chizo. Yeah, just a quick comment on international law. Let's remember that African countries are nation states. You know, they are separate states. Therefore, laws between them is part of international law. Let's bear that in mind. Thank you very much for your comment. Brother Victor, the Victor. Is that your name, the Victor?
The Victor, okay,
please
I'm Victor, but you know, now it's more specific. Actually, I'm from Kenya, and I've been wanting to join the platform. However, I got the opportunity today to join the platform and I'm really obliged to be part of the discussion today. About the topic of the day, we are talking about unification of Africa, which is a very important point, especially to me,
Yeah,
because
Brother
I
Victor,
am yes.
Brother Victor, it's
Yes.
our topic every Saturday, not just today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a few points to make. First of all, we must remember our history as Africa. We have our own culture. And before the white man came, or the colonizer, we had our way of life. And our way of life as Africans, we never really valued materials and the curiosity to know what was under our feet. But the white man had the curiosity and the education, and he came, the first product he saw was the slaves. The slave trade came in, and
Brother,
after that,
sorry, Brother Victor. Brother
yes,
Victor, sorry. That is a
yes.
racist statement to make. That's statement unacceptable. It is not true,
Yeah.
please. It is not true. So please don't repeat such we don't feel free to speak your mind, but we will challenge you if you make statements that are not true.
Right. I, is it okay for me?
Sorry?
Okay.
No, brother Victor can continue speaking. I'm just
Okay.
I'm just interjecting that is a racist view that Africans know the value of their lives, their minerals, and so on. It's not true.
Right.
And you see, this kind of a narrative was promoted by liars and racists to make it seem like they were justified of our resources. That's not true.
Right.
That's the point I'm making.
Right.
But Victor, feel free.
Can I just add so that my brother understands? Can I just add something? When the Arabs came to the east coast of Africa, they saw us processing gold. They saw us wearing gold. They saw us processing metal into bronze. They saw us making our own tools. So this story that we didn't know the wealth below our feet is not correct. It's just a judgment.
It's very offensive, honestly.
Right. Yes. So we need to be aware that it's not them who came to mine gold for us. We were mining gold. We were processing gold. We knew what the formulas were, and we were trading it amongst ourselves and amongst the Arabs and the Portuguese, and then later on the rest of the world. So I think we just need to watch out with the narrative, my brother. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for the guidance. And I'm also here to learn. However, I need to put a question forth even before I proceed. How is it that African countries are not in a position?
Brother Victor.
Okay, I have just listen to the question.
Brother Victor.
Okay.
Let him ask.
You're not the only one here to learn. We are also here to learn. So please, yeah, we can also learn from you. Yeah,
it's okay.
We also don't know everything. Yeah.
Okay. I'm raising a question because according to the current African setup, because I live in Africa, we find that most African countries, especially the governments, declare and actually come out publicly to say that they don't have the capacity to mine the minerals that are under our soils. So they end up contracting foreign companies, especially these companies that come from the developed countries. They term it as a very expensive machinery or wherever the excuses they give. So my question is to you, since as Africans, we had the technology and we knew exactly the value of our minerals, how is it that we are in the 21st century? How comes that our governments are not in a position to mine this gold, process it, and then export it as a final product?
Yeah.
So that is something.
Victor, very good question. We'll park it for now because we can't answer it right now. It will take too long. Yeah, but
it's okay.
You have asked a very important question, which we need to address, and we will address it in another session, maybe tied with the unification story, unification conversation.
Okay.
So,
if I may
thank you.
conclude in a few minutes.
Thank you very much
because
for raising the question. Before you before you continue, Brother Pigeon, can you make note of that point so that we can have a session to deal with the mining of minerals in Africa and why our neocolonial governments are refusing to invest in it and invite thieves to come and do it, and then justify the fact that they're inviting thieves because we don't have the capacity. So please know that, Brother, please, so that we can come back to it. Brother Victor, continue and finish your comment.
There is a statement which is so popular that says political power without economic power, it's meaningless. So the reason as to why I brought in the slave trade thing, it's because after with the abolishment of the slave trade, we still have protectorates in Africa, where some the former colonial powers have divided Africa into different sections. The first section, we know in West Africa, we are talking about the French. Where I come from here in Kenya, we are talking about the British and so many powers. So the kind of currency we use and the languages we use, they still reflect the image of the colonizer. They are not in the image and likeness of Africans. So the unity of Africa, that is the main point that we are talking about, and the borderless Africa that we are looking forward to, I believe that it can be achieved if most Africans engage in trade. Why do I say this? The unity and the development in Africa, the underdevelopment in Africa, sorry, it's intentional. Why do I say it's intentional? We've discovered some gold mines, especially here in Kenya, where animal reserves, they were reserved as animal reserve, the World Animal Reserve Parks, but in real sense, the title deeds are still in the names of companies that come from the colonizers, who are the British and so on. And also, we've seen some development here in Africa, especially let me talk about Kenya, and I visited Tanzania sometimes before. I saw that airstrips can actually be constructed within a very short period of time, and an infrastructure that can cost billions just in areas where there are minerals. After they've constructed them, the rest of the surrounding is left so remote and the roads are still bad, but they have a landing point where helicopters can come and land and pick the minerals and leave. So underdevelopment, the disunity of Africa, so-called, it's actually fueled by some forces which are intentioned to keep Africa the way we are, simply because they know that resources come from Africa. The strongest weapon is human resource, who are the people. Without the people, you cannot produce, you cannot get things running, and they know that. Right now in Kenya, there is a lot of rural, actually, people are running away from the country, especially young people of my age. So they're going to look for jobs in Europe and other European countries. Even our president is on record saying that he has looked for employment opportunities in Germany and other developed countries. So you find that we are now exporting the most precious the resource, which is the human resource, young, energetic, and learned young people, brain drain, and we are taking them outside. So the borders in Africa are artificial, and they are created intentionally by people who are controlling our economy. If you look at the list of the most wealthy people in the world, you'll come to find that people like Akina Dangote, the Nigerian, they come at, okay, they are the top 10, but they rarely show up at the top of the pyramid. Reason being, Africa, we have the political power, and I think we are still fighting for the political power. We are yet to achieve it totally. Especially, let me talk about my country, Kenya, where we are struggling so much to maintain democracy, and yet we are at an era where we should be fighting for economic liberation. So political power without economic power, it's meaningless. And this, the kind of freedom that we have in Africa, it was given to us. If you look at the Berlin Conference, most of especially the West African countries, yes,
it wasn't to us. We fought for it. We took it in some places. We went to war in Angola for it. It wasn't given
But
to
you
us.
can also,
Amilcar Cabral
you
was
can also,
assassinated. Brother
you can
Amilcar Cabral
also
was
agree,
assassinated. Because, oh, please. Anyway,
you can
Brother Victor,
also,
you have a lot. Brother Victor, you have a lot to say. We'd like to hear a lot of what you have to say. Unfortunately, we are 19 minutes over the half an hour that we agreed to speak to. So please hold your thoughts and join us next Saturday and continue your conversation with us. Is that okay, sir?
no, I wish I had concluded.
You can
But
conclude now, but please, 1 minute to conclude. Yeah,
okay, my
please.
conclusion, my
Yes.
conclusion is that you know what is happening in Africa.
No,
It's not by
conclusion, Brother
accident.
Victor. Conclude, not
Yes,
this
I'm
another
concluding.
long statement.
Why
Thank
is
you.
it that you want? Why is it that you want me to conclude the way you want it to be? You
Because
know, you should
of the
let me.
time, we are meant to
It's
finish at
okay.
9, but
Just give me a
because
minute.
we started late,
Tell
because
me
of
how long I have.
Brother Victor,
Tell
can
me
I
how long
explain? Can I
I have.
explain?
Let
Brother
him
Victor,
speak.
can I
You're taking
explain?
time. You're
Normally,
taking time
we
explaining.
start. Yeah, hold on. Let me explain. Normally, Brother Victor, we start at 7 and finish at 9, 2 hours. We had a technical
Give
glitch
me a
today,
minute
so
just to conclude.
we didn't
Just a
start on
minute.
time. So we extended the time to 9:30. It's now 10 minutes to 10. It's midnight in Kenya, I believe, and other parts of Africa. We need to bring the meeting to a close. We meet every Saturday, so you have time to share with us again your thoughts. This is not the only meeting. We meet every Saturday. Yeah. So you can conclude your thoughts now and then come next week and share with us an extended version of your thoughts. Okay.
Okay. So
So
my
conclude. Yeah, conclude. Yeah, thank you.
my conclusion is that what is happening about our borders and the division in Africa, it's intentional. And it's intentional because Africa is not yet free. We still have a long way to go in terms of the struggle, and especially we need to rise up and fight for our economic freedom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please join us next Saturday and share your thoughts. Brother Sifiwe, can you make the last comments based on what you've heard today? Link it with PFM and let's close the meeting. Thank you.
Wow, this was great. I think my closing comment is that we have this understanding of the necessity of Pan-Africanism, that as African people, as Black people, we have this indissoluble tie to Africa, and we have this necessity of uniting because we lack sufficient power in the world. So in whatever sphere of human activity, whether it's law, economics, social, health, whatever it is, we need power in order to have African solutions to African problems. The issue of power is addressed by the scientific understanding that sovereignty devolves from our creator to the created, the human being. So we, the people, have this sovereign power given to us through natural law. Now, we organize ourselves and we give that sovereign power to governments to better organize the human resources and natural resources to build economies. We give sovereign power to government. Since we don't have a government of African people that we enjoy and that is effectively solving our problems, it is the people's responsibility to withhold their sovereignty from the current governments and to invest it in new entities. And that entity we are calling a United African States, that can be achieved through the people giving their or processing their sovereign input through a process that's called a plebiscite or referendum on the issue of the future political destiny of African people. When we organize the campaign machines on the ground that will put in place the mechanism where we can have these referendums, and the people can say, I want to confederate, I want to federate, I want to join a unitary government one way or another, or I want to integrate in the current status quo. Until the people go through that process, we cannot have a political entity with sovereign power that will solve the problems of the people. It is that scientific understanding that the PAFM brings to the Pan-African movement to say, while everybody is discussing all the other relevant topics, we are going to focus on the engineering of putting together that mechanism. And so this is one of the reasons why I enjoy coming to this group and participating in high-level discussions and injecting this element into it. And so with that, I will conclude.
Thank you very much. Brothers and sisters, this brings us to the end of today's CSG, Conservatism Study Group, Saturday meeting on unification. Thank you all for coming. Those of you who can, we look forward to you joining us on our Thursday class, where we discuss philosophy and ideology based on conscience, which is a philosophy and ideology of the Osagifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Having said that, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are, and have a wonderful next night or morning or afternoon, whatever. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And see you. Those of you can't see you again on Saturday to continue the discussion and the conversation.